The stars had watched humanity crawl out of its cradle and reach for the heavens. For 200 years, they had spread quietly across 17 star systems, building colonies on distant worlds, mining asteroids, and creating a civilization that stretched across the void. They did all of this in the outer edges of the galaxy, far from the great powers that ruled the core worlds. And for 200 years, nobody noticed them. That changed on a cold December morning when the exploration vessel Wandering Star accidentally crossed an invisible line in space. Captain Sarah Chen had no idea that she had just entered territory claimed by the Velan Dominion, one of the oldest and most powerful members of the hegemony of United Species. The hegemony was a coalition of 400 alien races that had governed most of the Milky Way for over 50,000 years. They had seen countless species rise from their homeworlds, and they had a system for dealing with newcomers. Young species were given a choice: submit to the guidance of the elder races, or be crushed. 3 weeks after the Wandering Star's accidental border crossing, a massive vessel appeared in Earth's solar system. It was the diplomatic ship of Ambassador Thex Orin, a high-ranking member of the Velan Dominion. The ship was 5 kilometers long, covered in golden metal that shone like a small sun. It was designed to impress and intimidate, and it did both very well. Ambassador Thex Orin was a tall creature with 4 arms and skin like polished stone. He had served the hegemony for 300 years, and he had performed this duty many times before. He would meet the leaders of this new species, explain their place in the galactic order, and secure their submission. It was routine work. When Thex Orin's shuttle landed on Earth, he was greeted by a delegation from the United Earth Council. He noted their appearance with mild interest. They were soft creatures, with only 2 arms and fragile-looking bodies. His intelligence report said they called themselves humans. The humans escorted him to a large meeting hall in a city they called Geneva. Through the windows, Thex Orin could see 12 human vessels in orbit. They were small ships, elegant in design, clearly meant for ceremony rather than combat. He almost smiled. This would be even easier than he had expected. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador," said the human leader, a woman named President Okonkwo. "We are honored by your visit." Thex Orin inclined his head slightly. "The hegemony has observed your species for some time. You have done well to spread beyond your home world. Many young species destroy themselves before reaching this point." "Thank you," President Okonkwo replied. "We are eager to learn about our neighbors in the galaxy." Indeed. Thex Orin activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Most of it was colored in shades that represented hegemony territory. On the very edge, a small cluster of dots showed human space. It looked tiny and insignificant. "The hegemony has governed this galaxy for 50,000 years, Thex Orin explained. "We have brought peace and order to 400 species. We have ended wars, shared technology, and guided younger races toward civilization. Now we extend this opportunity to humanity." President Okonkwo nodded politely. "What exactly does this opportunity involve?" Thex Orin pulled up another display. "The terms are simple. Humanity will be allowed to keep 3 of your current star systems. The remaining 14 will be transferred to hegemony control for resource extraction. You will pay an annual tribute of raw materials, and you will accept advisors from the elder races who will guide your development." There was a long silence in the room. The human delegates looked at each other with expressions that Thex Orin could not quite read. "And if we decline this offer?" asked a military officer named Admiral Tanaka. Thex Orin's stone-like face showed what might have been amusement. Young species sometimes make that mistake. "The hegemony has a fleet of over 2 million warships. We have fought and won wars against species far more advanced than yours. Decline our offer, and your 17 systems become 0 systems. Your cities become dust. Your people become a memory." He gestured at the human ships visible through the window. "You have 12 vessels in orbit. The Velan Dominion alone has 80,000 warships. I tell you this not as a threat, but as a simple fact. Resistance would not be brave. It would be suicide." President Okonkwo's expression remained calm. "We appreciate you explaining the situation so clearly, Ambassador. This is obviously a significant decision for our species. We ask for time to consider your generous offer." Thex Orin had expected this. Young species always needed time to accept their fate. "The hegemony is patient. You have 30 of your planetary rotations to provide your answer. I will remain in your system to receive it." After the ambassador left, The human delegates gathered in a secure room deep beneath the meeting hall. President Okonkwo turned to Admiral Yuki Tanaka, the commander of Earth's military forces. "How accurate is his assessment of our strength?" the president asked. Admiral Tanaka smiled. It was a strange smile, the kind that appeared on the faces of people who knew a secret. He counted our diplomatic fleet. 12 ships. That is exactly what we wanted him to see. And our actual strength? The admiral activated a secure display. Unlike the ambassador's map, this one showed human space in detail. But it also showed things that no alien had ever seen. Hidden shipyards inside gas giants, construction facilities buried in asteroid fields, entire fleets tucked away in fold space, invisible to any scanner. 250 years ago, our ancestors intercepted alien transmissions, Admiral Tanaka explained. They learned that the galaxy was ruled by powers who crushed or absorbed anyone weaker than themselves. So they made a decision. They would build in secret. They would show the galaxy only a tiny fraction of our true strength. They called it the Iceberg Protocol. President Okonkwo studied the display. How many ships do we actually have? Active fleet? 42,000 combat vessels. Reserve fleet and fold space storage? We call it the slumbering Armada. The admiral paused. 800,000 ships ready to wake at my command. The president let out a long breath. The ambassador thinks we have 12 ships. Yes, and we're going to let him keep thinking that. For now. Admiral Tanaka turned to face the other leaders. The hegemony has made a mistake that powerful nations always make. They assumed that because they couldn't see our strength, we didn't have any. They looked at us and saw prey. They have no idea that they're looking at a predator that has been patiently waiting for exactly this moment. What do you recommend? The president asked. We give them their 30 days. We act nervous and uncertain, and then we politely decline their offer. The admiral's smile grew wider. Let them send their punitive fleet. Let them think they're teaching us a lesson, and when they arrive, we'll begin showing them just how badly they've miscalculated. Far from Earth, in the outer reaches of the solar system, something stirred. In the hollowed-out interior of a moon that humans had secretly converted into a military base centuries ago, lights began to flicker on for the first time in 100 years. Massive doors, hidden beneath kilometers of rock and ice, began to grind open. The slumbering Armada was beginning to wake, and somewhere in the void, Ambassador Thex Oran sat in his golden ship, composing his report to the Hegemony Council. Contact established with Species 7412, self-designated, humanity, he wrote. Assessment: minimal threat, primitive technology, negligible military capacity, recommend standard integration protocol. He had no idea how wrong he was. 250 years before Ambassador Thex Oran arrived at Earth, a young scientist named Dr. Maria Santos made a discovery that would change human history forever. She was working at a radio telescope facility in Chile when she detected something strange. It was not random noise from the stars. It was organized, structured, and clearly artificial. After months of analysis, her team reached a conclusion that both thrilled and terrified them. They had found alien transmissions. The messages were not meant for humanity. They were communications between distant civilizations, scattered across the galaxy like conversations in a crowded room. Dr. Santos and her team spent years learning to decode them. And what they learned kept them awake at night. The galaxy was not empty. It was full of life, full of civilizations, full of great powers that had existed for thousands of years. And those powers did not welcome newcomers. The transmissions told stories of young species that had revealed themselves too soon. Some were conquered. Some were destroyed. Some were absorbed into the hegemony and lost everything that made them unique. The governments of Earth gathered in secret to discuss this discovery. They faced a terrible choice. They could hide on their planet forever, hoping to never be noticed, or they could venture out into the stars and risk the same fate as so many others. In the end, they chose a third option. They would go to the stars, but they would go quietly. They would build their strength in secret, showing the galaxy nothing until they were ready. A committee of military leaders developed this strategy and gave it a name: the Iceberg Protocol. The idea was simple. An iceberg shows only a small part of itself above the water. The rest remains hidden, massive and dangerous, beneath the surface. Humanity would be the same. They would let the galaxy see only a tiny fraction of their true power. For 2.5 centuries, this plan guided everything humanity did in space. When they built a colony, they built two. One visible, one hidden. When they constructed a shipyard, they placed it inside a gas giant or a hollowed-out asteroid, invisible to outside observers. When they designed warships, they created two versions, a modest display version for aliens to see, and a true version with far greater capabilities. The greatest achievement of the Iceberg Protocol was the slumbering Armada. Over 200 years, humanity constructed a fleet of over 800,000 warships. These vessels were placed in fold space, a dimension that existed alongside normal space but could not be detected by any known technology. There they waited, maintained by automated systems, ready to be called upon if humanity ever faced extinction. Generations of military officers kept this secret. They trained in hidden facilities. They ran simulations of wars they hoped would never happen. They passed the knowledge to their children, who passed it to their children. The galaxy remained ignorant of what humanity had built. Now, as Ambassador Thex Orin waited for Earth's response to the hegemony's demands, that long preparation was about to be tested. The 30 days passed. President Okonkwo delivered humanity's answer. A polite but firm refusal. They would not surrender their colonies. They would not pay tribute. They wished to be friends with the hegemony, but they would not be subjects. Ambassador Thex Orin received this news with something close to pity. "You have made a terrible mistake," he told the humans. "The hegemony will respond. I hope you use your remaining time wisely." He departed Earth's solar system, and 2 weeks later, a Velan battle fleet arrived at humanity's colony on Kepler 442b, 200 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything the humans had supposedly built. Their commander was Admiral Rethkai, a veteran of a dozen wars against species who had made the same foolish choice. The colony on Kepler 442b was home to 3 million humans. It was a beautiful world, with blue oceans and green forests, much like Earth itself. In orbit, Admiral Rethkai's sensors detected only a handful of human defense platforms, small, primitive things. He almost felt embarrassed to have brought such a large fleet for such an easy target. "Broadcast the standard warning," he ordered. "Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender before we begin bombardment." The warning was sent. And then something unexpected happened. The defense platforms, those small and primitive objects, began to change. What Admiral Rethkai had seen was only a tiny portion of each platform, the part that existed in normal space. Now, the rest emerged from fold space. The platforms revealed themselves to be massive orbital fortresses, bristling with weapons that the Admiral's computer could not even identify. "What is this?" Rethkai demanded. "Where did those come from?" Before anyone could answer, the fortresses opened fire. The Velan fleet's shields, which had withstood countless battles, failed almost immediately. Ships began to explode. Admiral Rethkai watched in disbelief as his 200 warships were torn apart by weapons that should not exist, fired by a species that should have been helpless. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, the Velan fleet was debris floating in orbit around Kepler 442b. Admiral Rethkai's flagship was one of only 3 ships to survive, and it survived only because the humans had deliberately disabled it rather than destroying it. A human face appeared on Rethkai's communication screen. It was a young officer, calm and professional. "Admiral, your remaining ships are free to leave. Please inform the hegemony that Kepler 442b is not available for conquest. Have a safe journey home." Rethkai was too shocked to respond. He ordered his damaged ships to retreat, and they limped back to hegemony space carrying news of the disaster. The report caused chaos in the Hegemony Council. 200 warships, destroyed in minutes by a species they had classified as primitives. It was impossible. It had to be some kind of trick, some kind of mistake. High Arbiter Keth Moran, the leader of the council, called an emergency meeting. "How did this happen?" he demanded. "Our intelligence said they had almost no military capability." "Our intelligence was wrong," admitted the Velan representative. "We saw only what they wanted us to see. Then we will send a proper fleet this time," Keth Moran declared. 3,000 ships. No more mistakes. No more underestimating these creatures. The other council members agreed. 3,000 warships would be enough to crush any resistance. The humans had gotten lucky once. They would not get lucky again, but far away, in the hidden chambers of Earth's military command, Admiral Tanaka reviewed the battle data from Kepler 442b. Her officers were celebrating, but she remained thoughtful. That was only their initial response. She said, "They'll be back with more ships. Many more. Let them come," said one of her captains. "We'll destroy them again." Admiral Tanaka shook her head. "We won't destroy them. Not yet. We need to show them the truth slowly. If we reveal everything at once, they might do something desperate. Frightened animals are dangerous." She pulled up a strategic display. "We'll let them send their 3,000 ships. We'll defeat them, but we'll let most of them survive. We'll capture their crews and treat them well. We'll show them that we're not monsters. And if that doesn't work," the Admiral's expression grew hard, "then we wake the slumbering Armada. All of it. And we show the galaxy what 250 years of patience and preparation really looks like." In the depths of Fold space, 800,000 warships waited in perfect silence. Their crews were long dead, but their automated systems remained active, monitoring signals from Earth. They had waited for generations. They could wait a little longer. The Hegemony Combined Fleet was a sight that had terrified countless species throughout galactic history. 3,000 warships from 12 different races, gathered together under a single command. Battleships the size of mountains, carriers that held thousands of fighter craft, weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Fleet Commander Vorix stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the final ships arrive at the staging point. He was a Kreeth, a species known for their military prowess. His body was covered in natural armor, and his 4 eyes could track multiple targets at once. He had commanded fleets in 9 wars, and he had never lost. "All ships report ready," his second officer announced. "The fleet is at full strength." Vorix nodded with satisfaction. "Set course for the human system designated New Geneva. We will teach these creatures what it means to defy the hegemony." New Geneva was humanity's 3rd largest colony, with a population of 12 million. It was a frontier world, far from Earth, far from any help, or so the hegemony believed. The journey took 2 weeks. When the combined fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Geneva system, Commander Vorix immediately ordered a sensor sweep. "Report," he demanded. "Detecting human vessels," his sensor officer said. 40 cruisers and 1 carrier group. That appears to be their entire defense force. Vorix allowed himself a moment of amusement. 40 ships against 3,000. The humans were either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. "Broadcast the surrender demand," he ordered. "Tell them they have 1 hour to disable their weapons and prepare for occupation." The message was sent. The human response came within minutes. "Hegemony Fleet. This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Navy. We will not surrender. We recommend that you withdraw from this system immediately. This is your only warning." Commander Vorix actually laughed. His bridge crew laughed with him. One warning? These humans had spirit, he had to admit. But spirit would not protect them from 3,000 warships. "All ships, advance," Vorix commanded. "Destroy their fleet. Then begin planetary bombardment." The combined fleet moved forward like a wall of death. The human ships held their position, their weapons charging. Vorix watched them with something close to respect. They knew they were going to die, but they were going to fight anyway. Admirable. In a primitive sort of way, the first shots were fired. Human vessels dodged and weaved, their movements surprisingly quick and precise. They struck back with weapons that were more powerful than hegemony intelligence had predicted. Several ships on both sides were destroyed in the opening moments of the battle, but numbers were numbers. The 40 human ships could not stand against 3,000. Slowly, they began to fall back, retreating toward the colony planet. "They're running," Vorix's second officer observed. "Should we pursue?" "Of course. Don't let a single one escape." The combined fleet pushed forward, chasing the retreating humans. They were so focused on their prey that they almost didn't notice when they crossed an invisible line in space. Then the trap sprung. Across the battlefield, space itself seemed to twist and shimmer. Gravity mines activated, invisible devices that the humans had placed weeks before. The combined fleet found itself caught in a web of artificial gravity wells that disrupted their formation and prevented them from retreating. "What is happening?" Vorix demanded. "Why can't we move?" "Gravity mines, Commander, hundreds of them. We're locked in place. And then, from behind the moon of New Geneva, they came. Doors that had been invisible moments before slid open in the lunar surface. Ships poured out like water from a broken dam. Not a dozen ships, not 50, 200 heavy battleships, each one larger than anything in the hegemony fleet. Behind them came thousands of smaller vessels, fighters and bombers, that filled space like a swarm of angry insects. Commander Voryx stared at his sensor display in disbelief. Where did they come from? Our scans showed nothing. They were hidden in fold space, Commander. They were there all along. We just couldn't see them. The human ships opened fire with weapons that made the hegemony's technology look like toys from a previous age. Battleships that had survived 100 wars were torn apart in seconds. Shields that were supposed to be unbreakable shattered like glass. The organized formations of the combined fleet dissolved into chaos as each ship fought desperately to survive. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication channel again. Commander Voryx, you are now facing the 3rd Frontier Group of the United Earth Navy. You have lost 400 ships in the past 15 minutes. You will lose more if you continue fighting. I recommend surrender. 400 ships. Lost. Already. Voryx looked at his sensor display and saw that the number was actually closer to 500 now, and it was rising every minute. 3rd Frontier Group? He repeated. What does that mean? It means, Admiral Chen replied calmly, that this is one of 12 such groups positioned along our borders. You brought 3,000 ships to fight 40. You are now fighting 240 battleships, 600 cruisers, and approximately 4,000 support vessels. Do the mathematics, Commander. Voryx did the mathematics. If this was one of 12 groups, and if each group had similar numbers, the humans had tens of thousands of warships. At least, maybe more. You're lying, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I have no reason to lie. You can see the truth on your sensors. Your fleet is trapped, outgunned, and taking heavy casualties. Surrender now, and your crews will be taken prisoner and treated according to the rules of war. Continue fighting, and you will all die. The choice is yours. Voryx watched another 100 of his ships explode. His flagship shook as enemy fire struck its shields. Around him, his bridge crew looked at him with fear in their eyes. He was a warrior. He had never surrendered in his life. But he was also a commander, responsible for the lives of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Was his pride worth their deaths? All ships, he said quietly. Cease fire. Lower shields. We surrender. The battle ended. The guns fell silent. Out of 3,000 hegemony warships, approximately 800 had been destroyed. The remaining 2,200 were captured, their crews taken aboard human vessels as prisoners of war. Commander Voryx was brought to Admiral Chen's flagship. He expected cruelty, perhaps torture. Instead, he was given comfortable quarters, medical attention for his wounds, and a decent meal. When Admiral Chen came to speak with him, she was polite and professional. I don't understand, Voryx admitted. We came to conquer you. We would have killed millions of your people. Why are you treating us well? Admiral Chen considered the question. Because we're not you, she said simply. We don't want to be your enemies, Commander. We never did. Your hegemony gave us no choice but to fight. But defeating you in battle doesn't mean we have to be cruel. We're better than that. Your people are strange, Voryx said. Perhaps. Or perhaps the galaxy has simply forgotten what mercy looks like. The Admiral stood to leave. Rest now. When your government asks for your return, we'll send you home. Hopefully by then, your leaders will understand that there's a better way than conquest. Voryx sat alone in his cell, trying to make sense of what had happened. He had come to destroy a primitive species and had been utterly defeated. But his captors had shown him kindness instead of cruelty. He began to wonder if perhaps the hegemony had made a terrible mistake, not just in attacking humanity, but in everything they had done for the past 50,000 years. Far away, in the halls of the Hegemony Council, the news of the disaster was just arriving, and the terror was just beginning. The Hegemony Council chamber had not seen such chaos in 10,000 years. Representatives from 400 species shouted over each other, their voices mixing into a roar of fear and anger. On the great display screen above them, the Battle of New Geneva played over and over again. 3,000 ships, destroyed or captured in less than 4 hours. High Arbiter Keth Moran struck his staff against the floor, demanding silence. Enough. We will have order in this chamber. Slowly, the noise died down. The representatives turned their attention to their leader, waiting for him to explain how this disaster had happened. Our intelligence services are working to understand the situation, Keth Moran began. What we know is this. The humans have far more military power than we believed. Far more than anyone believed. How is that possible? Demanded the Velen representative. We watched them for decades. We scanned their systems. We saw only a handful of ships. A new figure stepped forward. This was Specialist Thren, the head of Hegemony Intelligence. Her species communicated partly through color changes in their skin, and right now that skin was a sickly shade of green. Fear. The humans deceived us, Thren admitted. They have technology that allows them to hide ships in something they call fold space. Our sensors cannot detect anything in fold space. We have been seeing only what they wanted us to see. How many ships do they have? Someone asked. Thren's skin turned an even darker shade. We don't know exactly. Based on the Battle of New Geneva and other intelligence we've gathered, we estimate their active fleet at approximately 40,000 combat vessels. The chamber erupted in noise again. 40,000 ships. The humans had been classified as a primitive species with almost no military capability. Now they had a fleet larger than most hegemony members. But Thren was not finished. That is only their active fleet, she continued, her voice shaking slightly. Our agents have discovered references to something called the Slumbering Armada. We believe this is a reserve force, stored in fold space, maintained by automated systems. The exact size is unknown, but our estimates suggest. She paused, as if afraid to say the words. Suggest what? Keth Moran demanded. Hundreds of thousands of ships. Perhaps as many as 1 million. Complete silence fell over the chamber. 1 million ships. The entire hegemony, all 400 species combined, had approximately 2 million warships. If the humans had half that number hiding in fold space, that's impossible, whispered the Krith representative. No single species could build such a fleet. It would take centuries. The humans have been in space for 2.5 centuries, Thren replied. They have been building in secret for that entire time. They anticipated conflict with the hegemony long before we ever knew they existed. Keth Moran felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear. Not for himself, but for the hegemony itself. For 50,000 years, they had ruled the galaxy through superior strength. Now, suddenly, they were facing a species that might be stronger. We must destroy them before they grow any more powerful, declared the Krith representative. We gather every ship we have and strike at their homeworld. No half measures. Total annihilation. Are you insane? Replied the representative from the Tellery, a peaceful species known for their wisdom. You saw what happened at New Geneva. We sent 3,000 ships and lost them all. What makes you think more ships will succeed? Because they cannot have hidden all their strength. They must have limits. The debate raged for hours. Some called for total war. Others demanded negotiation. A few suggested simply leaving humanity alone, withdrawing to hegemony space and hoping the humans would not pursue. In the end, the war faction won. The hegemony would gather its full strength and strike at Earth itself. 15,000 warships from every member species, the largest fleet assembled in 10,000 years. While the great powers argued, smaller things were happening in the shadows of the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of younger hegemony species began making secret contact with human diplomats. These were species that had been conquered or absorbed by the hegemony thousands of years ago. They had served as subjects and servants for longer than they could remember, and now, for the first time, they saw hope. We have watched the humans, said one such ambassador, meeting with a human diplomat on a neutral station. They defeated the hegemony's fleet, but they did not destroy it. They took prisoners and treated them well. This is not how the hegemony operates. This is something new. The human diplomat nodded. We have no desire to conquer anyone. We just want to be left alone to live our lives. But if the hegemony won't allow that, we're prepared to fight. Many of us would rather live under human protection than hegemony control, the ambassador admitted. If war comes, you may find that you have more allies than you expect. Word of these secret meetings reached Admiral Tanaka on Earth. She smiled when she read the reports. The hegemony's greatest weakness, she observed, is that they made so many enemies on their way to power. Empires built on conquest are never as stable as they appear. Meanwhile, her intelligence services were tracking the hegemony's preparations. 15,000 warships, gathering at a staging point near hegemony space. The largest fleet ever assembled, aimed directly at Earth. They're committing everything, one of her officers observed. If they lose this fleet, they'll have almost nothing left. They're frightened, Admiral Tanaka replied. Frightened people make desperate choices. They've decided to bet everything on one throw of the dice. She turned to her communications officer. Send the signal. Authorization code Omega-7. Ma'am? That's the full activation code for the slumbering Armada. I know what it is. Send it. The signal traveled out from Earth at the speed of light. It reached relay stations scattered throughout human space. And from there, it was transmitted into fold space through specialized equipment that had been maintained for over a century. In the darkness between dimensions, something received the signal. 847,000 warships began their awakening sequence. Reactors that had been dormant for generations sparked to life. Computers began running diagnostics on systems that had waited patiently for this moment. One by one, the ships of the slumbering Armada reported ready for duty. The awakening took 3 days. When it was complete, humanity had access to a fleet that outnumbered the entire hegemony combined. Admiral Tanaka reviewed the status reports with a mixture of pride and sadness. Our ancestors built this fleet, hoping it would never be used, she said quietly. They wanted it to be a deterrent, something so overwhelming that no enemy would dare attack. But the hegemony didn't know about it. They couldn't be deterred by something they couldn't see. Should we reveal it now? Asked her second-in-command. Show them what we have before the battle begins? No. Let them come to Earth. Let them see our home world, the planet where all this began, and then let them watch as we show them the full strength of our Armada. She paused, staring at the star map that showed the hegemony fleet moving toward Sol. This will end one of two ways. Either the hegemony will finally understand that they cannot conquer us, or they will understand nothing and be destroyed. I hope it's the former. I really do. In the void of space, 15,000 hegemony warships continued their journey toward Earth. Their commanders were confident. Their soldiers were ready. They had no idea what was waiting for them. A scout ship at the edge of human space sent one final transmission before it was detected and disabled. They're coming out of fold space everywhere, the terrified pilot reported. Thousands. No, tens of thousands. I can't count them all. Gods of the void, what have we awakened? The pilot never received an answer. But soon, the entire galaxy would learn the truth. The hegemony Grand Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 15,000 warships, the greatest concentration of military power the galaxy had seen in 10,000 years. They spread out in perfect formation, a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across millions of kilometers. High Admiral Thexoran stood on the bridge of his flagship, the same ambassador who had first visited Earth months ago. The Hegemony Council had given him command of this fleet as a chance to redeem his failure. He had promised to deliver humanity's surrender or their destruction. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. The fleet is at full combat readiness. Thexoran nodded. Open a channel to Earth. It is time to give these creatures one final chance. His message was broadcast across all frequencies. People of Earth, this is High Admiral Thexoran of the Hegemony Grand Fleet. You are facing 15,000 warships, the combined military might of 400 species. You have demonstrated surprising capability in previous engagements. But this ends now. Surrender immediately, and your population will be spared. Resist, and your planet will be reduced to ash. You have 1 hour to respond. The response came not from Earth's government, but from Admiral Yuki Tanaka herself. High Admiral, thank you for your generous offer. However, we must decline. You came here to conquer a species you believed was weak. You assumed that because you couldn't see our strength, we didn't have any. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. You were wrong. Let me show you what 250 years of quiet preparation looks like. Thexoran was about to respond when his sensor officer screamed. Contacts. Massive fold space signatures. They're everywhere. Across the solar system, space itself began to tear open. It started near Jupiter, where the great gas giant had hidden humanity's largest shipyards for centuries. Ships poured out of fold space like water from a burst dam. Battleships, carriers, cruisers, destroyers. Thousands of vessels emerging from nothing. Then came Saturn, then Mars, then the asteroid belt, then the outer reaches of the system where the Oort cloud had concealed entire fleets. Every hiding place that humanity had prepared over 2.5 centuries was revealing its contents at once. Thexoran watched his sensor display with growing horror. The number of enemy contacts climbed higher and higher. 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, and still they kept coming. "That's impossible," he whispered. "That's impossible." His tactical officer's voice was barely audible. "Sir, I'm counting over 800,000 vessels, and there are more still emerging." 800,000. The hegemony Grand Fleet was outnumbered more than 50 to 1. They hadn't come to fight a battle. They had walked into a trap from which there was no escape. Admiral Tanaka's voice came over the communication channel again. "Hi, Admiral. You are now looking at the slumbering Armada, the full military strength of the United Earth Navy. You have approximately 847,000 combat vessels surrounding your fleet. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your shields cannot stop us. Your ships cannot escape us. Surrender now, and no one needs to die today." Thexoran's mind raced. He could order an attack, but what would be the point? His 15,000 ships would be destroyed in minutes. He could try to retreat, but the humans had already surrounded them. There was nowhere to run, but surrendering meant admitting defeat. It meant the end of the hegemony's dominance over the galaxy. It meant everything he had believed in was wrong. "You're bluffing," he said, though he knew he was lying to himself. "Those ships aren't real. They're projections, tricks, illusions." "Would you like a demonstration?" Admiral Tanaka asked. "I can have one of our dreadnoughts destroy an asteroid for you, or perhaps one of your own ships, if you prefer. I assure you, our weapons are very real." Thexoran looked around his bridge. His officers stared at their displays with expressions of complete despair. They had come here expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had found themselves completely and utterly outmatched. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why did you hide all of this? If you had shown us this fleet from the beginning, we never would have attacked you. And if we had shown you this fleet from the beginning, you would have seen us as a threat to be destroyed before we grew any stronger," Admiral Tanaka replied. "We watched the galaxy for a long time before we made contact. We learned how the hegemony treats young species. We knew that revealing our strength too early would only bring war sooner. So we hid, we built, we prepared, and we hoped that we would never need to use what we had built." She paused. "We don't want to be your enemies, High Admiral. We never did. We just want to live in peace, to explore the stars, to build a future for our children. But we will not be conquered. We will not be ruled. And now you know why." Thexoran closed his eyes. He thought about his career, his beliefs, everything he had fought for. The hegemony had existed for 50,000 years. It had seemed eternal, unchangeable, the natural order of the galaxy. And now, in a single moment, all of that was crumbling. "All ships," he said quietly. "Lower weapons. Deactivate shields. We surrender." The battle that wasn't a battle was over. The hegemony Grand Fleet, 15,000 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy, surrendered without firing a single shot. They were escorted to secure locations where their crews would be processed as prisoners of war. But Admiral Tanaka was not finished. She opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in the system, and from there to every world in the hegemony. "Citizens of the galaxy, this is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Navy. Today, the hegemony sent its greatest fleet to conquer humanity. That fleet has surrendered. No one was harmed. No ships were destroyed. We could have killed them all, but we chose not to. We do not want war. We do not want conquest. We do not want to rule over other species as the hegemony has done. We want only to live in peace and to be treated as equals. To those species who have suffered under hegemony control for thousands of years, there is a better way. You do not have to be ruled by those who conquered your ancestors. You can choose your own future. To the hegemony itself, the age of conquest is over. The galaxy is changing, and you can change with it or be left behind. We offer you friendship and partnership as equals, but we will never accept submission. This is humanity. We are not your enemies unless you force us to be. Come to us in peace, and we will welcome you. Come as conquerors, and you will find that we were ready for you all along." She ended the transmission and sat back in her chair. Around her, the slumbering Armada floated in the silence of space. 800,000 ships that had waited generations for this moment. The aftermath was everything Admiral Tanaka had hoped for. The Hegemony Council collapsed within weeks, torn apart by internal conflicts and rebellions from subject species who saw their chance for freedom. A dozen races declared independence. Others reached out to humanity, seeking alliance and protection. In the end, a new galactic compact was formed, with humanity as a founding member. Not an empire built on conquest, but a true partnership of equals. Species that had been enemies for millennia learned to work together. Ancient hatreds began to heal. 1 year after the battle, that wasn't a battle, Admiral Tanaka stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city of Earth. She was older now, tired, ready to pass her responsibilities to the next generation. A young officer approached her. "The slumbering Armada has completed its return to Fold Space Storage, Admiral. All ships are secured and in preservation mode." Tanaka nodded. "Good. Let them sleep. Hopefully they'll never be needed again. Do you think we'll ever face another threat like the hegemony?" The Admiral considered the question. "Probably. The galaxy is a big place, and there's always someone who thinks conquest is easier than cooperation. But when that day comes, our children will be ready. They'll remember what we built, and why we built it." She looked up at the stars. The same stars her ancestors had dreamed about long before they had the technology to reach them. "We never wanted to be warriors," she said softly. "We wanted to be explorers, builders, dreamers. But we learned that sometimes you have to be strong to protect the things you love. Our ancestors understood that. They built the slumbering Armada hoping it would never wake. But they built it anyway, because they knew that hope alone isn't enough. You have to be prepared." The young officer nodded. "The galaxy underestimated us." "Yes, and we showed them why that was a mistake." Admiral Tanaka smiled. "But more importantly, we showed them mercy when we could have shown them destruction. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us human." In the darkness of Fold space, 847,000 warships settled back into their long sleep. They had fulfilled their purpose. They had protected humanity in its moment of greatest danger. Now they would wait, patient and silent, ready to wake again if the need ever arose. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was a sleeping giant that had finally opened its eyes, and the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter.